Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a shortcut, if you will, to understanding a really enigmatic figure in Scottish literature, James Hogg.
Right.
A man who was, and this is the amazing part, literally a shepherd. Self-taught poet, borrowed books, played the fiddle, and then somehow wrote this incredible psychological masterpiece about, well, the fractured human mind. Like a century before Freud was even thinking about it.
Oh, it's quite something.
So we're peeling back the layers on Hogg today, the man who really nailed this anxiety of the divided self.
Yeah, and our sources place him right in that fascinating space, that kind of twilight zone.
The gloaming, they call it.
Exactly, the gloaming between Enlightenment rationality and romantic imagination, and maybe even more potent between that heavy Calvinist idea of damnation and a kind of, well, rustic mysticism.
That's a whole bundle of contradictions.
It really is, and it's the classic outsider story, isn't it? That nickname sums it up, the Ettrick Shepherd.
Which was true, but also
Wildly misleading in some ways. Born 1770, Ettrick Forest, Scottish borders, apparently quite rugged, unshaven maybe, barring books.
playing the fiddle.
Right. But then writing this fiction that was just so daring, so out there, it completely baffled the literary scenes in London and Edinburgh.
And he wasn't totally isolated, was he? He knew the big names.
Oh, absolutely. This is a guy who apparently drank with Lord Byron and, crucially, had this long, complex relationship, almost a rivalry, with Sir Walter Scott.
Wow.
But to really get Hogg, you have to grasp his core genius, which was, I think, resisting easy labels, resisting categorization.
Yeah, with hiding something.
Maybe hiding in plain sight, using that rustic mask, He produced this literary case study of moral paranoia. It was so unsettling that people back then genuinely thought he might be, well, a bit mad. And I love that quote from him about his own writing process. He said, "I know not what it is till it is written."
That says it all, really.
That uncertainty, that feeling of it coming through him rather than from him, that's the engine of his best work, I think.
Okay, so let's dive into that best work, the big one. The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner,
The thunderclap, yeah.
published anonymously, 1824. And it lands in Edinburgh and just confusion. Critics were totally bewildered. Is this satire? Is it religious horror?
Yeah.
Genius? Madness? They couldn't pin it down.
And that's absolutely by design. What makes it so groundbreaking, so modern almost, is the structure. It's built on this radical dual narrative.
Right. Explain that.
Well, first you get what seems like a neutral, objective account. An editor tells the story of this young nobleman, Robert Ringham, who descends into fanaticism and ultimately murder. The editor tries to make sense of it rationally, biographically.
Okay, straightforward enough so far.
But then the second half just blows that first part wide open. You get Ringham's own confession in his own voice. And his version is, well, it's supernatural. It's terrifying. He believes he's not only justified in his actions, but actively guided by this demonic companion.
So the two halves are in direct conflict.
Completely. And that clash between the rational editor and the supernatural confession is where the psychological terror lies. It forces you, the reader, right into that divided state, constantly asking, is Gil Martin the devil? Or is this just madness? Delusion?
It puts the reader in the uncomfortable position.
Precisely. You don't know who or what to believe.
Let's talk about the character, Robert Ringham, raised in this super strict Calvinist environment in, 17th century Scotland?
That's right. But it's not just a simple critique of strict religion. It digs into this really radical theological idea. Just how radical was this premise that leads him to kill?
It sounds pretty extreme.
Oh, it's profoundly dangerous. It all hinges on this extreme interpretation of predestination, what they called spiritual justification. The basic idea is God has already decided who's saved, the elect.
Okay.
So if you truly deeply believe you are one of God's chosen, one of the elect, well, then your salvation is already guaranteed. You're untouchable, in a sense.
Right. I see where this is going.
It creates this terrifying loophole, this paradox. If you're already saved, then any sin you commit on earth, well, it can be reframed. It's not really a transgression against God. Maybe it's even a necessary evil or an act carried out for God.
Yeah.
So sin becomes permissible, even righteous, under the cover of justification. It basically gives Ringham this divine permission slip to eliminate anyone he decides is unholy or standing in his way. He thinks he's just doing God's pre-approved work.
That's chilling. And then, as if that internal justification isn't enough, this figure Gil Martin appears.
Yeah, Gil Martin.
This
Yeah.
charismatic, mysterious guy who just validates every dark thought Ringham have.
He's the absolute embodiment of this twisting logic. Is he the devil? Is he a hallucination born of Ringham's own suppressed evil? Or maybe even creepier, is he both? Some kind of externalization.
Does he force Ringham?
No, that's the genius of it. He doesn't command. He persuades. He flatters Ringham, debates theology with him, twists arguments, expertly convinces him that every violent act is actually virtuous, necessary.
So it's more than just a jab at religious extremism.
Much more. It's a dissection of certainty itself, isn't it? The novel is asking this really profound question. What if absolute faith, total belief, doesn't lead to salvation? What if it actually delivers you straight into this self-consuming madness?
Where the belief itself becomes the trap.
Exactly. Most romantics were trying to clarify the soul, elevate it. Hogg wanted to complicate it, to show the soul turning on itself, eating its own logic. That's why it feels like such early, powerful psychological horror.
And this internal battle in the novel, the rational versus the, let's say, demonic, it seems to mirror Hogg's own life, his own position.
Absolutely. His identity was a constant source of tension with the literary world.
He was rooted in what the sources call the folk mind.
Right. And he often got slapped with that condescending label, natural genius.
As if he just stumbled into it.
Yeah, like it was accidental. But his real strength, his power, came from being so deeply immersed in the oral tradition. The ballads, the legends, the actual sound and rhythm of speech, both Scots and English. It wasn't book learning, it was lived culture.
Which brings us straight to Walter Scott.
The crucial relationship is messy, fascinating. A real case study in power dynamics. Scott was his first big supporter, his patron. Hogg, when he was younger, literally wrote down ballads for Scott's famous collection, The Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border.
So they shared a real interest.
A genuine love for folklore, yes. But it quickly became unequal, didn't it? Scott soared. Became Sir Walter Scott, the knighted establishment giant, the Wizard of the North.
Polished. Respectable.
Totally. While Hogg, he remained the shepherd. That
Yeah.
name became a kind of cage, often used patronizingly.
How did that difference play out in their writing?
It's key. Scott organized tradition. He cataloged it, polished it up, made it respectable, suitable for the drawing rooms of Edinburgh and London. Gentrified it, really. Hogg, though, he lived in it. He kept it messy, uncanny, supernatural. He wasn't tidying up the past. He was showing how the past was still alive, still haunting the present.
So there was friendship, but also rivalry. Did Hogg actively try to one-up Scott?
Oh, constantly, I think, but often subtly. Scott wrote these grand historical romances. Hogg would dive straight into the stuff Scott wouldn't touch, the uncanny, the demonic, the morally ambiguous, things that might upset Scott's very large, very respectable audience.
He wanted to be seen as more than just a source.
Exactly. He was desperate to prove he wasn't just some quaint rustic providing raw material, but Scott's literary equal, or maybe in his heart of hearts, even his superior in certain ways.
And if Scott cast a big shadow, the rest of the Edinburgh literary scene, they weren't always kind either, were they? Blackwood's magazine comes up.
Oh, Blackwood's, yes. The top literary journal of the day, and they could be brutal.
They used his nickname against him.
They turned the Ettrick Shepherd into this recurring, almost cruel comic character, portrayed him as this sort of drunken, bumbling rustic, full of malapropisms, completely out of his depth in their sophisticated literary chat. They weaponized his background to mock his ambition.
That's rough. How did Hogg react?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting and very Hogg-like. This is external doubleness, being praised and mocked, being an insider and outsider simultaneously. It perfectly mirrors the divided selves in his books.
He fought back.
Sometimes he just played along. He actually wrote essays for Blackwood's as the shepherd persona they'd created.
Seriously?
Yeah. Using the mask, they forced on him to deliver his own sly, sharp satire right back at them. He was both the butt of the joke and the secret author of it, feeding the caricature while using it against them. That ability to wear a mask, use it as both shield and weapon, it feels incredibly modern.
Which brings us right to the relevance question. Why should you, listening now, care about this book from 200 years ago about, 17th century religious paranoia? Where's the connection?
Well, if you step back and look at the big picture, Hogg is talking directly to some of our biggest anxieties today. Things like identity, authenticity, self-trust.
He seems to anticipate later writers known for this stuff.
Absolutely. You can see echoes of Dostoevsky's existential dread, Kafka's paranoia, even the kind of quiet, unsettling domestic horror you get in Shirley Jackson.
He writes about characters you just can't trust. But crucially, they don't trust themselves.
Exactly. They aren't just haunted by ghosts or demons out there. They're haunted by their own potential for darkness, their own fractured minds.
That feels very now.
It really does. Think about our age, obsessed with curating identity, online algorithmic selves, digital avatars, this constant pressure for performative identity. Hogg's vision of a person literally split, haunted by a deceptive double. It feels eerily spot on.
And Gilmartin.
Gilmartin is fascinating in this context. Today, we use terms from therapy, right? Like gaslighting or internalized depression to talk about manipulation or self-doubt. Hogg gives us Gilmartin, this charming, persuasive figure who systematically undermines Robert Ringham's reality, convinces him his worst impulses are actually virtuous. He's like the ultimate toxic companion, the voice that flatters, corrupts, and then consumes. He personifies that terrifying mix of self-delusion and external manipulation.
And it's all the more powerful because Hogg was writing from the margins.
Totally. He achieved this insight from outside the established literary world. He resisted smoothing things out, kept the dialect, kept the weird supernatural bits that London publishers probably hated. He was the outsider seeing the inside of the human psyche maybe more clearly than the insiders.
He was, as he said, the shepherd and the shapeshifter.
He claimed he was only a man with stories to tell. But that was, classic Hogg understatement, a bit of performance art itself.
He mastered so many different tones.
Rustic comedy, yes, but also chilling horror and even biblical pastiche. He blended it all into something completely unique.
It seems strange then, given the power of the Confessions, that his legacy in Scotland today isn't bigger.
It is strange. It's surprisingly muted, isn't it? A few statues, a local festival. His reputation, as the sources say, kind of flickers in and out of visibility.
Like his own characters.
Exactly. It's almost a tragic irony, fitting his themes, that someone so ahead of his time is still often overlooked, marginalized by the canon.
So a final thought for people to take away.
I think Hogg gives us this incredible vision of shame as a landscape, guilt as a kind of haunting. If you walk through his home territory, the Ettrick Valley, especially at dusk, you might not see an actual ghost.
Hopefully not.
Probably not. But you might feel that specific Hogg-like unease, that sense of a world having hidden layers, of the self-containing strangers.
The self-containing strangers. That's powerful and perfectly captured in that line from the Confessions itself. When the judgment's weak, the prejudice is strong, and a man's own opinion is always right.
Chillingly relevant.